Welcome back, Whisky fans. Happy December the 13th. Sad to say that I haven't really got any little December the 13th facts or observations for you today. Second day of running, didn't really find a lot. So instead I've gone for another little space exploration factoid for you on December the 13th. This day in 1972 was the last time that mankind set foot on the moon. So that again was Apollo 17. The lunar expedition that took the blue marble photograph that I talked about a few days ago. It's amazing to think how much we achieved between 1969, the first time man went to the moon, and 1972, that brief period. We achieved so much, and it was really a massive step forward for mankind, to paraphrase a famous quote, and then we didn't really do a lot since. At least not in terms of sending people up there. So December the 13th, let's see what we've got. You will also notice that on some of these I've been using the same glass, and at the end of the tasting I've been rinsing it well with mineral water and keeping the glass for the next day. This time I've gone with a new glass. I'm using my St George and the Dragon English Whisky Company glass today, because I don't want any of that French stuff spoiling the nosing and the tasting for this one. Because it's a bit strong, and it's a bit... I don't want it. So label away. It's got to be a better one today, hasn't it? Obviously people like Brenne and their products, but I'm not one of them. It's kind of my arch nemesis. One of them anyway. So let's get rid of that. It's another pale one. Beautiful colour. Although looks very clear as well. You can see straight through that, can't you? You can see my fingernail. Ugh, probably shouldn't show you that. Definitely a lot more promising than the Brenne. Although I'm not saying that this is a Scotch either, to be honest. There's definitely some very active oak on the nose of this one. Spicy, freshly sawn oak. Some maltiness. An unusual sort of berry fruitiness, I think. Yeah, definitely very active oak. But smells pleasant enough. It's definitely got that strange, it's hard to describe, very hard to describe, berry sweetness, musty berries, slightly herbal, sweet berry note. It's definitely got some sweetness to it, sweet maltiness. It smells like a well-made young single malt. Let's see how it tastes. I wasn't expecting that intensity after the French whiskey yesterday, which is bottled at 40%, and I think I might be wrong. It might be horrible no matter what ABV, but that Brenne French whiskey from yesterday, I think that if they up the ABV to even 43, that might help some of those pleasant flavours that you get on the nose come through on the palate more, so you're not just left with that bitter, thin quality, whereas this one's the absolute opposite. The nose, I was a little bit unsure about it because it's pleasant, but probably only slightly more pleasant than the notes that I was getting from the Brenne, which I was very disappointed with, so I was guarded with this one. But as soon as I got to the palate on this one, it's got a lovely fruity intensity, and I think that that without a doubt means that we're looking at something probably 45-46% on this one. Definitely much more to my liking than the French whiskey. Getting some really nice sort of bakery notes on the nose of this one now. Really glad that this is it seems to be a proper craft presented whiskey. Getting some doughy, freshly baked bread on the nose, as well as a nice kind of lemon fondant, lemon sherbet note. So a nice little sweet and sour. Doughy though, very bready, cereally, toasted grains. Undecided if this is, I think this is probably Scotch. I think it was that raw oak quality, and probably because I was still thinking about the Brenne from yesterday, made me think this might be a European, maybe like a Mackmyra, like a good Mackmyra, because they're making some good stuff these days. It's getting more and more mature by the year. But I think this is Scotch. But it's a Scotch that has got some very active oak in it. It's going to have another little sip, because I want to have another sip and see if I can guess an age on this one. Really very good. Lovely juicy lemon, sharp fruitiness on the palate, more toasted grains, a little bit of sort of slightly extractive fresh oak. It is definitely a very modern whiskey. That oak is very prominent, but lots of maltiness as well, lots of sweet fruity maltiness. A little bit more of that bakery fresh bread note coming through. But the intensity on the palate of this one, it reminds me of that one that I had on, was it day 2? The Weems Spice King, reminds me quite a lot of that, in both the intensity and the sharp fruity malt. So I think if this one sells for less than £45 a bottle, I'll definitely buy a bottle of this. As for an age, on the nose, I think that very prominent oakiness was throwing me a little bit, but on the palate, I would say probably around 12 years old, 46 to 48% perhaps. Don't think I'm going to be able to guess what this one is. I would say probably a single malt, although maybe a blended malt. But if it is a blended malt, it's very, very well made stuff. And I can see this one. I don't know if I'd say this is better than the Weems Spice King, but I think it's probably going to be the next one down. It's going to follow very closely behind. I think I have still got some of the Spice King here, so I'll have to do a little comparison at some point there. Yeah, I've got that much Spice King left. So the Spice King was 52%. I'd say this is a little bit lower and probably about the same age. So really interested to see what this one is. If it's not Scotch, they're doing a bloody amazing job, because I like Scotch, it's my preference, and it's on par with Scotch, or it is Scotch. So let's have a look. Deanston. So I haven't actually had Deanston for a very long time. I have had a fairly broad spectrum of their releases, but not for a few years. So this is Deanston 14-year-old, so it's a couple of years older than I guessed. And as with almost all, or as with all of the standard core expressions from Deanston, it's 46.3%, because Distell are amazing and they do that because they like us. So it is a single malt from Scotland, obviously being Deanston, and it's a Highland. So I'm not familiar with the 14-year-old from Deanston at all. I don't know if that's had a cask treatment added to it, and that's why I'm getting that sweet and sour fruity note. Breadiness is something that a lot of people associate with Deanston, I think. I always have done. Breadiness and toasted grains. It's definitely part of the house style from Deanston, I think. But that's a fantastic whiskey. So I need to find out how much that sells for, because that's really good stuff. Really pleased that they've put something like a Deanston in this calendar as well. It's nice to get some more traditional, just straightforward, well-made whiskey. Okay, so it seems like what they've given us here is the Deanston 14-year-old organic. There's a couple of other 14-year-old expressions from Deanston, but I think the one that we've got available at the moment and the one that they've put in the calendar is the organic bottling. And it says that it's been aged for 14 years, but the whisky has been matured in bourbon casks, can definitely taste and smell that, before enjoying a finishing period in new oak casks. So you could say that it's really a cross between like the Deanston 12, which is a mainly bourbon matured expression with a good sort of low to mid-teen age statement, and the Deanston Virgin Oak's kind of a cross between the two, having that virgin oak finish and the age statement. This sells for £75. Not sure how I feel about that. That seems a little bit expensive for a 14-year-old whisky, although obviously with the way that things are going at the moment, it's becoming more and more normal to see 12, 14-year-old whisky edging towards £80, £100. I would definitely like to do a head-to-head tasting with this and the Deanston 12. Haven't had the Deanston 12 for a long time, but I think if the Deanston 12 is even remotely close to this, then perhaps the 12 is the way to go. But that's an absolutely phenomenal whisky. That bready character, doughy bakery bready character coming through from Deanston, mixing with that new oak finishing, works incredibly well. I'm not a huge fan of new virgin oak. I think that it can be very, very heavy-handed and destructive, but I think here they've done it incredibly well. And if anything, it's made me really excited to try the Deanston core range again, because I have actually got a full set of those. I've got the Deanston 12, the Virgin Oak and the 18 sitting unopened on my shelf waiting to be reviewed. So yeah, really looking forward to revisiting Deanston now. Hope you enjoyed this one too, and I'll see you tomorrow. Cheers.